the Student of the Game podcast, where we break down the life, strategy, and advice of successful individuals who are students of their own game and masters of their own craft. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to the episode.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Student of the Game podcast. I almost said UTC Real Estate Club. I was this close.
Yeah, recently changed the name. It's easy to mix up.
Yeah, so I'm Nick Galbreath. I'm your host, and my co-host here is Tim Stone, and we have the pleasure to introduce Scott Trench today, the CEO of BiggerPockets, the rugby advocate, and just so many amazing things that he's up to these days. So really appreciate you being here, Scott.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And let's go ahead and jump right in. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your life and sort of take a little pause once you get to college, and we'll pick it up from there, but catch us up to speed.
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in a suburb in Maryland between DC and Baltimore called Howard County, for those who care. As you mentioned, I grew up playing rugby, lots of sports that kind of dominated my life. Extracurriculars. I was always a good student. Got mostly straight A's and did well in the SATs, all that kind of stuff. 3-sport athlete in high school. I was football, wrestling, and lacrosse, and we had a fairly large high school, about 300, 400 students per year. And I was fortunate enough to make the varsity club for wrestling and football my sophomore year, win state championship in football, all that kind of stuff. So glory days, we're reliving them right now. Thanks for asking about all that. But yeah, I was a big athlete, good student, kind of busy all day. I would say my high school days, 60, 70 hour work weeks along those lines. Wake up at 6, go to school, practice or play, have a sporting game that evening until 5 o'clock on average, or on a late night, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock if there was a big game or something like that. Often have a tournament or something going on the weekends as well, and then homework, around squeezing that in around the things there. So when I got to college, my college search, I had a couple of schools I wanted to get into. Didn't get into my first choice, but went to Vanderbilt, and I ended up falling in love with. Had a wonderful college experience there in Nashville, Tennessee. I know it's right around, a couple hours from you guys. And at Vanderbilt, it was kind of wild because it was so much different. It was hard. It was academically challenging and all that kind of stuff. But going from a 70-hour work week to a 30 to 40-hour work week was a big change for me. And I was privileged that my parents paid for college, and I did not have to get a job during college. I funded my lifestyle and all that kind of stuff in summer jobs, where I kind of reverted into that 60, 70, 80-hour week type workload to make enough cash to fund my living expenses and fun stuff for college. I went into college, not sure what I wanted to do. Got started out as a kind of like an engineering intro class, but I was in the arts and science school, so I was not fully into engineering. Hated it, and decided to go and pivot to become a doctor, get a medical degree. And so I began doing that the second half of my freshman year and into my sophomore year. I then got an internship studying cancer. I wanted to be an oncologist at Johns Hopkins, which is a pretty cool experience, and decided I did not want to become a doctor or do that either. So I switched majors for the third time my junior and senior year, and I ended up with a dual major in economics and history, and I minored in corporate strategy and finance. So I am probably one of those rare folks who actually uses that degree on a pretty regular basis. And that kind of was where my interest settled. And I really kind of have fallen in love with personal finance, business, corporate finance, strategy, planning, all that kind of stuff over the last decade since I graduated. Wow, it's been almost a decade since I graduated. I graduated in 2013, so coming up on a decade, 8 years. In college, I was a pretty good student. I got like a 3.7 kind of deal. So I got pretty good grades there, but certainly was not top of the class or magna cum laude or anything like that. I was, as you mentioned, on the rugby club. I was captain of the rugby club. and very involved in my fraternity. So that tells you where a lot of my time, how a lot of my time was spent in college with that. I was very efficient, got all my homework done right after class. I was one of those guys who would like, okay, class is over. Now I'm going to spend 2 hours completing the project not because I'm like trying to be on top of my stuff, but because I'm like, oh, if I complete this in an hour or two after class, then it will take me 1 to 2 hours instead of 4 or 6 hours right before it's due to cram it all in. I just thought it was more efficient to do it that way. And that would give me more time back. So that was kind of how I viewed my college experience was I got good grades, figured out what I kind of like to do. And then had a lot of fun. Traveled around the Southeast playing in against most of the big SEC schools in rugby, and had a great experience. Made a lot of great friends through my fraternity with that.
Yeah, and I was just about to ask you, being in 3 sports in high school, taking all that social interaction, how when going to college, what did you get involved in? So you were involved with the fraternity, also the rugby club, and how do you think that's prepared yourself for what you're doing today? I mean, really just
being a busy athlete and just being involved in those things. Like, how has that shaped you? Because that's a big thing that I feel like a lot of people talk about. And I've heard it a lot in college as they're like preparing you for interviews and stuff. They're like, talk about sports. Like, people love that, to hear that maybe you were competitive or like you have leadership skills, you're a team captain. Like how has everything you did there sort of, pushed you and helped you? Is that sort of the question you were going?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think like so after maybe I'll pick up a story for another 2 minutes and then I'll come back and answer your question there.
Mm-hmm.
So after I graduated college, I got a job earning $48,000 a year at Dish Network, which is a satellite TV company. And look, I was treated fine at Dish, but I hated that career track. I didn't want to go and become I didn't want to start off as an associate financial analyst and then graduate to financial analyst to senior financial analyst, finance manager, senior finance manager, director of finance, senior director of finance, VP of finance, senior VP of finance, and CFO. And that's if you're really good over a 20-year career. So I didn't want to do that with my life, essentially. And I kind of realized that 3 months in. And so that's when I kind of began listening to podcasts like this one. You guys obviously weren't around, but like the stuff like this, like how do I advance myself? How do I put myself into a position or a different career track? What else is possible out there? And I discovered this concept of financial independence, where you can retire early with when your assets generate enough passive income such that you don't have to work anymore. And I was like, that's it. That's what I haven't been able to articulate it this way. But that's what I want to go after. And I'm snapping my fingers like it was an event, but for me, it wasn't an event as much as it was a process. I struggle now to recall the specific moments in time when it came over there, but in a 3 to 6 month process from August 2013, after I graduated college, to May of 2014, I kind of fully drank the Kool-Aid of this FIRE movement, following a guy named Mr. Money Mustache, his blog, and then a company called BiggerPockets, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more here with that. So anyways, Mr. Money Mustache was all about how to be frugal and spend very little, like $2,000 a month. And if you spend very little, that allows you to, 1, save up a lot more money, but 2, it means that you need less total passive income to actually fund your lifestyle and retire early. And it's like, while we all like to spend more, the concept of freedom was very alluring to me. And I was like, that's the most powerful lever I can do here. So I started biking to work, making my breakfast, or making my lunch, always make my breakfast, meal prepping, trying to be really, have a really good conservation of my cash. Still like to go out on the weekends and all that. So I definitely spent in that area, but I was able to get that spending close to about that $2,500 a month level. And that allowed me to save nearly half of my income, especially since I had a couple of side hustles going on, like driving for Uber and that kind of stuff after hours. And so at the end of 2014, a year after I graduated, two events had happened. One, I joined BiggerPockets, a startup at that point in July. I joined them because I thought that this company was going to go somewhere special. It was really cool. I was excited about the concept of real estate investing. And second, I bought a duplex, a little house hack duplex. It was a $240,000 duplex. I put down $12,000, 5%, down using a FHA loan, and fixed it up and rented out the other side for $1,150. And then a roommate came in and paid me $550. So that's $1,700 in income on a $1,550 mortgage per month with that. It took me a couple months to get there, and had to cash flow the first 3 months while I was DIYing a lot of that. But that was a huge propeller for me. So between those two moves, joining BiggerPockets, and I had a sales position. So I actually got a lower salary than I would have had if I had stayed at my first job, but I had commission upside. And so over the course of 2014 and 15, my income is nearly doubling over those years as I'm selling for BiggerPockets. I'm selling ads on our podcasts as my big revenue driver there, and I'm stacking a lot of cash because I'm house hacking. And that snowball, that's like really where the snowball began to get going, that I think is probably relevant to listeners here. From there, over the last 6-7 years, I've stacked in 4 total properties, 3 additional properties on top of that first duplex. I've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash on top of that in stocks, either in my retirement accounts or outside of those retirement accounts. I've written a couple of books. And I've got an ownership stake in BP as a CEO here with that. So I built a pretty nice little portfolio here that enables me to say, yeah, I'm financially free. I'm well past that point of being financially free right now. I can't have everything, but I can have essentially anything that I'm interested in. And I don't have that high of a spending tolerance. You were asking. So that's the rest of the story. Your question though was, how did sports prepare you for that, or something to that effect, right? How did that college lifestyle? And I would say
that
high
sports
school,
and interaction with fraternity brothers and building those relationships kind of propelled you for your future.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that high school, the experience I outlined for my high school experience prepared me for that journey way more than the experience in college did, right? Because again, I'm waking up at 6 o'clock every morning, going to school, cramming my homework in, meeting all the deadlines I need to meet by keeping my attention fully focused on the prize, which for me was the athletics, and trying to win there. And that's on school works on a pass-fail basis, right? Here's what you need to do to get an A, or it's like a clear cutoff, right? Sports it's a curve. It's are you better than the other guy with that? So that's where the effort I needed to apply all of that effort and intensity, and that's where I spent all of my time optimizing around that goal. That's what applied in the 80-20 of things into my early stages of my career and into today is that grind, being able to just crush it for 70, 80 hours a week, the day job, but then all of the things around that you need to do to get ahead, in order to like, it's work. It's 5-10 hours a week to set up a lifestyle, to prepare your life so that you can actually spend $2,000 a month or $2,500 a month. You got to plan how to do all that kind of stuff, and nobody's going to do it for you. With a lot of that, right? You got to spend the hours working on the investment strategy or fixing up the place, and it's on a curve. No, you're just not going to make the money until you do it. With that kind of stuff, you're not going to get the place to tenant until the property's ready and meets a certain level of standards with that. So that's what prepared me, I think, to go through that slog of probably 3 years from 2013 to 2016. Maybe 2017, before I'm like over that hump where I've got enough. I'm not done and not retired at 2017, but I've got enough assets and that are producing passive income where I know I'm clearly over the hump and I can kind of ride it out to that future state where my passive income exceeds my lifestyle expenses. So that's what prepared me. The fraternity and having fun in college, that was great. But like, I'd be lying to you if I said that was like the 80-20 of what prepared me to move toward financial independence very early in my career with it. It was the discipline of just putting that in, as the default for me for 4 years in high school, I think, with that. Sure, you can argue relationships, good networking, good memories, all that kind of stuff. Lots of fun, but I don't think it was the 80-20 of what prepared me for my career there. Although I certainly got value out of my studies and college education.
Absolutely. And kind of coming from kind of stepping back a little bit, when you get an internship working for a cancer or a doctor that specialized in cancer, and then you kind of step back out of that position and change your major to corporate finance and just business. And like what, I guess what ignited that? Was it an experience that you had, or was it family, or a mentor that you kind of ran into in that time, or how did that play out?
I think I was just kind of generally interested in it. I had a cousin who was doing some of that kind of stuff. I wouldn't say that was like there was any one particular factor that necessarily drove me toward it, other than I just thought it was interesting, and it was a good kind of field to study. I really fell into it totally in that first 3 to 6 months after I started working, when I kind of realized what it could do for me personally, because like, you know, I don't know about you guys, but like the real world is scary following college. You're like, I got to work 40, 50 hours a week and keep that up for a long time. That fear of like doing that for the rest of my life was very, very motivating from a self-education perspective. So I'm not answering your question very directly there, but is that helpful?
No, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
So let's just start talking about BiggerPockets. So you were a fan of BiggerPockets, and there's this startup. There wasn't a whole lot going on. I was listening to you on a podcast recently, and I think you were like the third.
Jay and Kill.
Yeah, you were like the third employee. So could you talk about that? Like, what did that look like, and where was it at when you came in?
Yeah. So I mentioned that I had been a fan of BiggerPockets prior to joining. And so I listened to the podcast, and on the podcast, one of the episodes in like the first 50 or 100 was like, go out and join a mastermind or go network with local real estate investors. So I did. I joined a local mastermind. We met at 7 a.m. on Thursday mornings, which is brutal for me because I did not like getting up at that early with that. But it was a group of cool Denver entrepreneurs who were starting businesses, usually in real estate. Some of them had completely tangential things that were not related. And we met once a month, and I just absorbed what they were doing and learned from them. And they were nice enough to let, at that point, a kid with no assets and no, I guess just general prospects hang around. And I took each one of those folks out to lunch individually, just to network and learn from them and hear their story more specifically. And one of those guys worked in the networking co-working space as the same network co-working space as the founder of BiggerPockets, Josh Dorkin. And I was a huge fan. I was like, oh my gosh, Josh, I listen to your podcast all the time. I am a member of your website. I am doing exactly what you told me right now. I am meeting a guy that I met through my mastermind group and taking him out to lunch. And here you are. And he was like, he doesn't remember it this way, but I remember something to the effect of, go away, kid. You're bothering me. I'm busy. I followed up 6 more times with him just to do the exact same thing. No agenda. I didn't want like necessarily a job. I just wanted to meet Josh, and felt that something would happen from that because, of the awesome community that he was building. And he eventually offered me a job as a result of, downstream from that follow-up. I remember the interview process and all that, meeting Brandon. Brandon asked me, what's your favorite TV show to binge watch? Which I thought was an interesting interview question. So be ready for that one on your first job interview or next job interview with that. And from there, I joined as the third employee. It was kind of like, I'm just going to handle all of the operations of the business that go unserved, and I stick my hands up and roll my sleeves up for every opportunity. I really wanted to build my rental property portfolio and become financially free. So I stuck my hand up for sales opportunity, anything I could do to earn more income. And in the evenings, after hours, I was allowed to, for free, write for the blog on a volunteer capacity with that. And so I started doing that as well. And over the next 3 years, I think that attitude and just kind of sticking my hand up and trying and the orientation of, I'm going to try to do everything I possibly can to make Josh's life easier, to make BiggerPockets successful, and to serve him as a fiduciary to him as an individual, not and understand his position as the owner of BiggerPockets, in addition to serving BiggerPockets, the company, with that. And I think that just enabled me to get a lot more responsibility and trust over the years, until he just trusted me with running the business totally in 2017 and 2018 with that.
Awesome.
That's truly amazing. I just want to go back to the point of you following up with Josh 6 times. And I think that it just hits our listeners a little different. It's just like you follow one time, he might not respond back, and they're just like, well, he didn't want to talk to me. But you followed up with 6 times, and I think that's so important.
I don't know if it was 6 times. It was maybe like 2 or 3 or 4. I was just using 6 times for effect.
We'll go with 6.
So don't read like all the way into that particular comment.
You didn't quit till it got there. Is the point?
Yes, I think that's probably fair. Yeah. So.
Yeah, because most of our members are student listeners, and they're figuring out what they want to do, and they admire someone, and they follow up with them, and might not hear back, and they kind of get discouraged. And I think that's just wanted to highlight that point of you continue going after. You really didn't have an agenda. You're just like, I'm going to serve Josh and grow his business and do anything that he needs me to do to make him successful, make BiggerPockets successful, and launched you into your the CEO of BiggerPockets now. We're listening to Jay and Carol's podcast. We kind of heard it was about 6 months ago, but kind of the drawing board of what you guys are doing now, and attending the conference was a truly amazing experience. That was my first conference. I know I'm kind of going everywhere. Yeah, I mean, it was so amazing. I just wanted to highlight another point of you said the 99-1 rule. I don't know if the camera's going out of focus, but the 99-1 rule, with 90% of people are just kind of spectating, just kind of see what's going on. I felt like I was in that position before I came to the conference, and kind of made a leap to the 9%, where I'm interacting, but there's a certain level of interaction to get to that 1% where you're very interacting, meeting new people. And at that conference, you just felt that energy of everybody kind of in that 1% attitude of just meeting everybody and helping anybody out in any situation. And it was an amazing experience.
Yeah. And I was going to say, go ahead.
Well, let me just react to that real quick, just so that folks listening can follow along with that. Well, what you're describing, the 90, then separate 9, then separate 1 rule, 99-1, is a rule in online communities where 90% of the people that are following a community like a BiggerPockets are going to be what we call lurkers. They're just going to read the content, never sign up, not post or vote or anything like that. 9%, 9% are going to do some of the posting and comment or like or whatever it is, or vote, whatever it is in that community, and 1% are going to do essentially all of the posting and dialogue in those communities. And that needs to inform, you need to be aware of that dynamic in your in building an online community. And so with that, I'll translate that into something helpful here for folks listening. You said there's an advice section, so I'll do that for 1 second here. The advice I would have that I think would be very helpful for folks is to understand the concept of mental models in a general sense. So what I just described there, the 99-1 rule, is one of hundreds or thousands of mental models that you can apply to business or life. And that allows you to then develop a strategy or a playbook or KPIs or those types of things downstream from that. And so the 99-1 rule is a good mental model for building an online community. I need to serve my 1% of my most prominent users, because they're going to be the ones who are the experts, who are going to produce all the good content that then the lurkers and the casual participants are going to engage with, right? Another good mental model that's even easier is Maslow's hammer. You ever heard of this? Guy that only has a hammer, every problem looks like a nail with that. So if you don't have a lot of mental models, you only have a limited array of them.
Same hammer and
you're going to apply them. You're going to always apply the same limited toolkit. So if you can develop these mental models early in your career, it's going to give you a huge advantage over folks. Some folks can go 10, 20, 30, 50 years only having a handful of mental models. If you can have a few dozen or a few hundred early in life, you're going to you're gonna, I think, run away with success over the first few decades. So long-winded,
Absolutely.
but I
Thank
wanted
you
to tie that back to the
Yeah, thank you for breaking it down.
And what I was going to talk about was sort of just networking and how important it is, specifically in real estate, just in a lot of business. And it's a big thing with BiggerPockets. Like you were saying, just get involved, like meet people, take people out to lunch, like meet those investors and like build those relationships and learn their stories. And going to the conference is like a big thing for that, because you can read the forums all you want, like you can be part of the 90%, and you feel like you're learning, but just like having those connections with people and having the conversations and hearing their stories and the things that maybe they haven't talked about on the internet is going to push you so much further. That's why you do need to like get out there and meet people and build those relationships and follow up with people and just be present, because it is so important. And so we need to go to more conferences is basically what I'm saying.
I think that's
More
right.
BiggerPockets conferences.
It's luck, right? It's luck is what it is. And you can't get lucky if you're hanging out at home playing video games, right? I got lucky. I met Josh Dorkin and joined BiggerPockets as the third employee, right? So that like no question, that's a ridiculously lucky event. I could have continued that networking profile, never hit on an opportunity quite as good as this one with that. But something would have emerged throughout the course of dozens or hundreds of networking opportunities along those lines that, I could have just spent at my desk eating a lunch or whatever it was.
Yeah. So you say you got lucky, which maybe you did, but you were putting yourself in a position to get lucky. And this is one thing that Grant Cardone says, and I may have said it in a previous podcast, but you can't hit a home run if you don't swing. And that's like the type of thing. Like you can't find opportunities if you're not looking for opportunities and going after them. So
that's right.
Like that's a very important part. Like, yeah, you did get lucky. You met the right person who had the right opportunity, the right stage of his life, the right stage of his business, but you also put yourself in a situation to meet that guy.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it.
Yeah. So it's luck, but it's not. It's not.
It was
what you're intending to do. So
yeah, I want to be like totally, acknowledge that, if I had not met Josh or had this opportunity, I believe I would still have the 4 properties that I've got, or some sort of equivalent to that, and a couple of other things. But I would be significantly farther behind at my journey with that. So like you have to acknowledge humbly that luck has a huge role in any side, any type of these outcomes, and it can go either way with that. And acknowledge that luck cannot happen to you if you're not putting yourself in position to get lucky with that. So it's a paradox to, I don't know, not paradox, but it's 2 opposing constructs to hold simultaneously.
Right. Yeah. I think we talked enough about the points to make it make sense, even though it is sort of a paradox. Yeah.
But kind of going off that point and kind of diving into what you're doing today, Scott, with BiggerPockets, maybe just like taking a broad overview is with BiggerPockets, what else are you doing? And maybe we can dive into a few.
And personal investments, anything, just like the financial independence thing is going to be very big for a lot of our listeners. Of course, I mean, that's the main thing for BiggerPockets is financial independence and freedom that comes through that. So sort of talk about what that picture looks like for you, but also we'd love to hear the future of BiggerPockets and what you're doing there.
Yeah. So my personal financial position, again, the goal was to become financially free. I think I've far surpassed that at this point. My portfolio, consists of 4 rental properties, and I have a business partner that I'm partnered with on those properties here in Denver, Colorado. And those properties have 10 units, a couple duplexes and a quadplex. And then I've got a substantial stock portfolio. I'm a big index fund investor. So I just every paycheck or every month, whenever I want to keep my emergency reserve at a certain level. And anytime I have cash over that, I just sweep it into my after-tax brokerage accounts there. Big index fund guy. Like I mentioned, I've written 2 books, which I consider personal assets as well. And then the remaining and the majority of my net worth is invested in BiggerPockets when I've had the opportunities over the years to invest directly in the company with that. And as a manager of the company, I have certain options and that kind of stuff. So that's my overall portfolio for what I'm doing. So I keep it very simple. I'm going to continue buying property once every year, or every 12 to 18 months, maybe a little more rapidly. Continue stocking money away into the stock market, and if opportunity presents itself, continue to invest in this business that I think is really cool and has a lot of long-term potential with it. Does that answer your question about my portfolio? Any questions about that before I get to BiggerPockets?
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
All right, so BiggerPockets. For those who don't know, what we do is how do I want to articulate this? If you want to get started in real estate investing, I think that you'll find that it's a high risk endeavor. It's the biggest financial decision you've made in your life, and what a lot of people like to do is like to spend literally 100 to 1,000 hours listening to podcasts, reading books, networking, or whatever before they're comfortable making a substantial real estate investment. And I think that's very wise with that. And I think that's what BiggerPockets at the first stage of the journey provides. We help people. You can listen to our podcast or watch a YouTube channel or read a book or join our forums or whatever, and you can conduct that 500 hours of investigation passively to your heart's content until you feel comfortable with the idea of investing. And we make money when that happens, right? So we make money because you're listening to our podcast and you'll hear an ad, right? Or we'll make money because you're buying a book, and we'll make a small amount of dollars per book. We think that our products are good enough to justify that financial profile, the fact that we make money on those things, and we're growing those segments by adding more content more frequently and of different types. So we find that folks want to listen to just how to get their first deal. So that's where we started a real estate rookie sub-brand for our business. We understand that real estate and personal finance are intricately linked. All real estate investors are cheap bastards. That's how they get enough money to save for that first property in the first place. So I host a money show, a BiggerPockets Money podcast with my co-host and partner, Mindy Jensen. And so we talk about personal finances and the journeys that people undertake to get to financial independence, usually involving a real estate and stock or small business or other types of, different, like the myriad ways you can actually get to financial independence and the toolkits you can use to get there. And so that's part one of our strategy, is to build out these sub brands or these different types of content where you can immerse yourself in different worlds. So if you're an advanced investor, expect in the next year or two for us to give you a place where we're not going to define what cash flow means from a real estate deal for the umpteenth time, and we're going to use
what does
jargon
NOI
like
stand for?
NOI, cap rate, and exactly. So we're gonna EBITDA. We're gonna use all this jargon to describe the business because that's the language of that business, and we're not gonna explain it. We're gonna have a place for those folks and a place in the rookie community where we're gonna make sure we explain it every time, so it's accessible throughout the journey with that. Expect the world of passive investing potentially to come in, or fix and flip. So that type of content is where our business is heading over the next couple of years. Second, we also have a subscriptions business and then a marketplaces business. And so our pro membership, our subscription product, is designed to help folks make good real estate investing decisions. So buy more deals faster with less risk, calculators, leases and landlord form templates, discounts on third-party services. We need to round out that value proposition and maybe create a couple of different subscriptions that are more appropriate for flippers or for more advanced investors who are putting together syndications, so on and so forth. Yeah. And then lastly, we're building what I think is the most exciting opportunity for us is this marketplace of matching investors with real estate agents and lenders, and property managers and insurance brokers and so on. But the first year or two, we're going to just focus on those agents and lenders. And what's great about this is when you're trying to buy an investment property, you don't want to talk to the realtor who sold your mom her house, right? Or your brother with that. You want an investor-friendly real estate agent. And that, I think, is something that we can provide that is not, you can't really find that online. And so even if our network is just one of the places that you interview for an agent on, that's still a really powerful option for a lot of investors. And it's a really good way for BiggerPockets to make money, because if we can refer someone to an agent, and let's say that agent goes on and makes a $10,000 commission, a certain percentage of that, maybe up to 20-30% of that, could be a referral back to BiggerPockets. We'd have to obviously build a brokerage before we could do that fully. And right now we're just selling leads. But that's a really big opportunity for the business. And what's great about it is the customer does not pay us. The agent is the one paying us. So there's a lot of things to like about that particular business model, and it's one of our fastest growing streams right now. So in the future, expect to see more of those sub brands that produce content that are specifically around certain strategies and for specific types of people at different stages in their journey. Two, expect us to round out that subscription value proposition and add a lot more value to our pro membership, especially in those periods between transactions. How do I manage my portfolio and scale it and systematize it and that kind of stuff? And then third, expect us to build networks of agents, lenders, property managers, and insurance brokers.
And I think that was very interesting where you were talking about starting a brokerage in BiggerPockets and kind of be an investor-friendly brokerage and have all these agents, joining the brokerage. Maybe that's how that would work. And then, it's such a great value atmosphere because you have so many like-minded people who want to achieve financial independence, and connect him to a space of investor-friendly agents who have, experience with different deal structures like wholesaling and, selling investment property, distressed property. Whereas a typical agent that, maybe works on, selling your mom's house or something like that wouldn't know how to, bring value in that transaction. So that's very fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's a
cool,
interesting opportunity. We'll see how it goes, right?
Yeah.
But I'm optimistic that it will be a really good value add for our users. And then, like I said, a really efficient way. One of the things, I'm an investor, and I like my job as CEO, so I want to keep it. And this is a good opportunity to grow valuation and drive revenue as well.
Absolutely. And kind of diving more into BiggerPockets as far as the culture you guys have in the BiggerPockets atmosphere. Could you kind of just talk about that? I know I just kind of the culture, not like a specific question, but kind of a broader review of the culture you guys have at BiggerPockets. And, we got a little taste of it, being around you guys and getting to meet you. So would love for you to kind of elaborate on the culture you guys have there.
Yeah, sure. So I think first we're pretty mission oriented. You talk about like why do we exist, and more specifically maybe why am I here on your podcast today with this, right? I believe that when you help especially younger folks, but when you help people become financially independent early in life, you're unlocking human potential is the way I like to phrase it, because this is somebody who has been disciplined or organized or creative or hardworking or lucky enough to build a substantial asset base in their 30s, in their 20s, in their 40s, in their 50s. This is somebody who has potential to go start a business, can get involved in nonprofits, maybe get involved in politics, do some sort of thought leadership, or just live a happier, healthier life in general, or a lower impact life from a carbon or whatever it is, right? Folks do all sorts of crazy things once they become financially free. And that has a multiplying effect, I think, downstream that we're going to realize as a society and reap a lot of dividends on. So that's what gets me up in the morning about this. And I think you'll find that our team here really buys into that and is seeking to one, help enable that from a mission perspective, and two, achieve it for themselves. So a large number of our team here are either active or highly intentional about getting involved in real estate investing or interested in personal finance in general. We just had our Spirit Week this week, which is a little different from past years because of, we're still partially remote with all that. But we had someone come in and give a discussion about real estate investing as one of the events there. We had brainstorming events on how to solve user problems and to that effect. We are starting a cadence of a monthly, we're calling it Investor Club, where we're going to invite a speaker from the community to come in and just give a lecture to employees and a Q&A with that. We may open it up to some of the local investors in Denver as well with that. And then I think you'll find a pretty energized and pretty passionate about what they do community here as well. So we have our 4 core values are be driven, work smart, grow together, and embrace community. And I think that's what we're trying to drive towards. We want people who want to work hard. We want people who want to work smart. And we want people who are willing to give and accept tough feedback. Right? We have this difference between nice and kind. Right? It's nice to cover for somebody who's not doing a good job, but it's not kind, because they're going to get a promotion and raise, maybe at your expense or one of your colleagues' expenses. Much kinder to confront the problem directly up front and not let it fester and swell and grow with that kind of stuff. I think that embracing that community means being a part. Bring a part of yourself to BiggerPockets, whether it's your terrible dad jokes that you want to post into our Slack channel, your poorly behaved dog, your sandwich making skills at our, we have these sandwich showdowns every once in a while, with that kind of stuff. Whatever that is, bring some part of yourself to our culture. And then 2, join and be a part of the investor community. You don't have to invest. It's not a requirement to be at BiggerPockets, but you should get to know our audience and user and that kind of stuff and be a part of that community. I will say that one caveat with that is that with that work smarter, we everyone says, I want freedom and autonomy, right? Freedom and autonomy is great with that, and I certainly like that. But with that comes accountability. And so what will happen if you are inexperienced or don't know what you're doing, or we're inexperienced and put somebody who's not ready for the job into a position, and we give them freedom. We don't give them a playbook with that kind of stuff. Sometimes people can build themselves a nightmare of a situation that they have to manage. That's 60, 80 hours a week to maintain. So just know that that's, we always try to make that clear up front for folks. That's not for everybody, because if you make a mess, you're gonna have to clean it up and figure out, and cleaning it up is going to involve building a better system, but you're gonna have to work even more on top of the time that it takes to maintain that system. So I think that's the culture you'll find here, is people who are tough enough to withstand those infrequent, relatively infrequent, but events that do happen, challenges in building and growing systems for our business, but who embrace our culture and like working here with a high energy. So unfortunately, I did outlast all of them at least one of the evenings at the conference, in the after party. So I gave them a little bit of grief about that particular showing. So maybe next year we'll see.
Awesome.
We've got a wonderful team. They're full of it's high energy individuals, really intelligent, work hard, crush it, and we operate a very fast growing, very profitable business because of the great team we have.
That's awesome. And to kind of bounce off of that, Scott, in the last year, what's a challenge that you faced to keeping that culture, or just a challenge you had, leading BiggerPockets, or whether it be a task or a mental mindset towards the situation? Just kind of diving into that.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest challenge has been I'm going to call it performance management. So what I think it's for me, at least, it's really hard to know what good looks like from certain roles and certain positions in the business. And it's really hard to define what good is if you don't know, and set clear expectations and get to that point. And so we've had a couple of changes at leadership team positions at the highest level with that. And I think in some cases, very necessary changes into those positions. And, when that happens, that's going to result in changes downstream as well. If a leader leaves, then their direct reports are going to leave. And then the folks that those folks hired may leave, or there'll be turbulence and that kind of stuff. And so having made changes at the senior leadership team level, we've got a wonderful leadership team in place right now that are just crushing it. But to get to that point involved a lot of changes and a lot of turbulence and turmoil over the past year, and a lot of learning. And it's my fault. I didn't know what good looks like in certain things, or what good for BiggerPockets, probably is a better way to phrase it, more specifically looked like in certain positions, or how to set and manage expectations very clearly with that. And I was probably way too passive about enforcing the expectations that I did have, and allowed too much time to go by, because that's the lonely job of being a CEO, is you are responsible for that at the end of the day. You got to set expectations, and somebody who's not able or willing or capable of doing a particular role is going to hold back the rest of your organization with that. So I think how's that for a brutally direct answer to what's been the biggest challenge for last year?
I absolutely love it. And I specifically love when you said, I found myself being passive when I set these expectations for myself to grow bigger pockets. And I think maybe, I find myself doing that. A lot of our listeners might find themselves doing that too, is setting expectations, setting their goals and being passive on them and, being a little down when they don't reach them. But, then that thought's like, okay, now I need to, set, incremental goals to reach that expectation. In that process, did you, and I guess you found that out about yourself, and was there anything else that you've found out about yourself through that process of that turmoil?
And I think here's the good news is you can reinvent yourself with all this kind of stuff, right? So 2 years ago, I'm a guy who avoids conflict, right? I'm trying to please everybody. I think that being a good leader is about making sure that everybody is happy and everybody succeeds inside of that organization. And that's not what business leadership is about. Business leadership is about putting together the best team, right? It'd be like trying to manage an NFL team by making sure that every current player was happy and saved for the next 10 years, but you don't have a draft and you're not constantly reevaluating against the town out there. And so that's been the biggest change for me. And my orientation to conflict resolution is dramatically different now than it was 2 years ago. When there's a problem, I'm going to confront you right away with it. And people are doing that to me as well, because I certainly make a tremendous number of mistakes with my personal items that I'm accountable for with those kinds of things. But that, I think, has been the biggest pivot for me. Is that was my identity was somebody who did not approach conflict or go after that. And I had to reinvent that in order to do my job effectively with this and serve you guys, the customer, much more effectively.
Awesome.
Man, that was powerful.
Yeah.
That was very powerful, Scott.
So we should probably start moving towards the last segment of the show, which is advice, which we sort of, it always, once we get into the strategy towards the end, it sort of naturally leans into advice. But one of the questions we like to ask, and Nick asked this almost, is what's the biggest lesson you've learned in the last year? Not necessarily the biggest conflict you've run into, but what's the biggest lesson that came out of that?
I think that's it for
yeah.
And again, I want to be clear that this advice may not apply to somebody starting an entry level position. Having a direct confrontational style, not confrontational style, but like a directly approaching conflict and problems with that may not be appropriate with your first manager or something outside of your control. So I think it's generally a good practice to err more towards that. And I don't, there's no extremes with all this kind of stuff. But just to be clear about that, that may not be that's probably really good advice if you're starting a business and becoming a CEO and managing a business, because any problems you're not confronting are going to compound. But I mean, just to be clear, I don't want to oversell that as like the first skill to develop early in your career. That's the biggest lesson though for me as a CEO. I'm accountable for everything, and I need to be proactive about confronting problems long before they actually translate to business or other types of consequences.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And to touch on your point too of trying to make everyone happy and just looking for the right team that's going to, sharpen everybody's actions. And when they're messing up, somebody that's going to come to you and say, hey, you made a mistake here, just confronting that conflict.
You're not going to make everybody happy, right? Yeah. And that's not the job, right? The job, like we are not going to make like BiggerPockets, for example. We treat everyone ethically. We advocate for ethical practices and all that kind of stuff. But we are a community of landlords and real estate investors. Clearly, we're not going to make some folks happy with that, right? And that's a mental. That is probably a good one from a mental hurdle. But with advice in general. And we can come back to this in a second if you want, but with advice in general, I do have a couple of key points for college students with that. So the first is I think you should obsess a little bit, maybe not as much as I did, but a little bit about the concept of financial freedom, right? If you are a normal college graduate, you are 22, 23 years old and have no idea what the heck you want to do with the rest of your life. Why would you not go down the process of building a flexible financial position that will allow you the opportunity in 3 to 5 years to change career paths or whatever it is? Even if you love your job now, your company may sell, your boss may move, you may get a peer who's horrible to work with in a couple of years with all that. I think that financial freedom as a concept is something that everybody should at least acknowledge and begin building a pretty flexible and strong financial position from an early age. It gets a lot harder over the next in the next decade after your 20s with that, just because you're rooted in a lot of different other life choices. Doesn't mean you can't. We have lots of stories about that, but why not go ahead and pursue that right away? And the second would be that those mental models that I just described. If you can read and network and learn as much as you can with that, with an open mind, the person that has 20 years of experience but hasn't read a book in those 20 years, you're gonna outshine them in the first 2 years of your career. I'm not saying that experience is not a valuable asset. It definitely is, but you don't have experience when you graduate college. So you have to just acknowledge that and say, what can I do? Well, what I can do is I can read 20, 30 books by the most noted minds in my field. And that's a pretty rapid head start. You're probably going to be better at that particular line of work than most of the people in that field. There are going to be people with 10 years of experience who have also read all of those books. You should learn from them and acknowledge that you're not going to beat them. But that's going to move you in your career ladder very rapidly, I think, compared to a lot of the competition. So those would be my two big pieces of advice: self-study with the intention of learning those mental models. Just absorb a bunch of them until you can apply them across a number of different disciplines. And then 2, build a really, really strong and flexible financial position, because it'll give you and those two things in tandem, I think, will give you a tremendous number of options in the first 3 to 5 years after graduation from college.
Awesome. You're prepared to speak to our listeners. That's awesome.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite type of place to talk is a podcast like yours, because I just think where is human potential the greatest? It is the recent college graduate, to a large extent, right? All of the options are available to you guys that they're not to other folks. Not to say that we're not serving every part of the of humanity that we can access with it, but this is just the most fun part, and it's go crush it over the next couple of years. You can still have fun. By the way, none of this is that time consuming compared to a lot of stuff. There are trade-offs, but if you just live somewhere that's super cheap, you can also travel and have all the fun stuff in the first couple of years. You can't have it all. You can't live downtown in the skyscraper next to all of the bars with that, and do a lot of traveling and build a rental property portfolio and achieve financial freedom in 5 years. You got to decide what's important there and what's not with it. And there are trade-offs, but they're not, for me. I didn't feel like it was that significant of a trade-off in terms of life and memories with that to get on the other side of that. So yes, I'm prepared because I'm very enthusiastic about this subject.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah. So you mentioned reading books to prepare yourself a little more, because when you're young, you just don't have experience. You can't have 20 years of experience if you're only 20. So what is one book that you've either given away the most amount of times or at least recommended the most? Feel free to plug your own book as well, but any other books that come to mind.
Sure. So I actually just made a list today for another subject of this. But I would say, look, I have a book. It's called Set for Life. With that, I like it, but I don't know, that and if you guys would like a few copies for folks, I'm happy to send you a couple of that. But here's a list of 5 to 10. The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Super Thinking. That's a great one. It's about mental models. That what I just described there, and it just gives you a list of 50 of them. It takes you a lot longer to actually internalize all of them, but that's a good one. The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel is really good. The Millionaire Next Door by J. Thomas Stanley. Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke which is she's a poker player. And I really like that because if you go about life thinking that I'm 90% on this particular thing, it's a lot better. It feels a lot better to be wrong on something that you're 90% on than something that you're certain of. And so if you just think about everything in the concept of bets, well, not everything, but if the vast majority of decisions in your life around the concepts of bets, you're going to feel a lot better about them because you can separate what was a good bet and what was a bad outcome with that. So I think that's a really good one. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss is in a book about negotiation, which I think is very powerful. Atomic Habits is about the New York Times bestseller that came out in the last year or two. And then How to Win Friends and Influence People is an old classic on that front. So that would be a good starting list. I guess it was 9 books for folks that I think are most impactful on me.
Yeah, it was a great list.
Well, we're going to get those implemented at UTC's library, that's for sure.
Yeah, we've been soft promised a budget to buy books for the real estate club at the university. So we may start building a little library of self-development books for the students. So we'll throw some in there.
We'll throw all 9 of them in there.
Yeah.
Thank you for breaking that down. And I also wanted to ask you a question, Scott. Is outside of BiggerPockets, outside of building your personal portfolio, what do you love to do that makes you happy, and what you enjoy to do?
And like this is like my midlife crisis right now because we mentioned at the beginning of the show I've been a rugby player, right? And so I've always identified as like a rugby player for all of my adult life. But the injuries have piled up, and I tried to give it another crack this year, and I just had another like kind of this nerve injury, neck injury called a stinger multiple times, and I'm like, okay, I need a new hobby. So my plan. Actually, last year I knew the end was coming last year, but it kind of came this year for rugby for me. And I was like, okay, my plan is I'm going to try these like 12 new hobbies. It was I made this whole list. I'm going to like scuba. I'm going to do like, I don't know, windsurfing or hiking and skiing and all this. And so COVID hit, and so I wasn't able to do that. And so like I don't have a good answer. I don't know what I like to do for fun right now with that kind of stuff. And that's a problem for me and something I'm going to fix now that we're ending this pandemic or it seems to be winding down, at least hopefully a little bit towards the end of 2021 here. So sad answer there. Right now, I don't have a great hobby, but I do have a wonderful life hanging out with my wife and our little kitty cat. We binge watch a couple of Netflix shows with all that kind of stuff. We do a lot of trips and travel, or at least so far we have so far towards the second half of this year with the pandemic opening things up. And we see friends at least twice a week for various things around town, park days or having over for dinner or just hanging out.
That's awesome. In the last second half of the year, what's been your favorite location that you went with your wife? And I'm sure did you
we
bring
went to
the kitty
Maui.
cat with you?
No, we don't take the kitty cat with us. So I'm smitten with my kitten is another way to say it. Okay, but we go to Maui. We went to Maui, and that was an incredible trip. So it's like you can go anywhere in the world. Maui's probably got to be up there towards the top of that list. Just perfect weather, beautiful sunset, great places to explore, big mountain to climb and go watch the sunset there, and there's a tropical rainforest on the other side of it, and the road to Hana, which is a pretty special experience.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and Brandon Turner,
and Brandon and Josh live there. Yeah, so yeah,
it's awesome. And but before we head off, Netflix show. Ben, you said you've been binge watching Netflix shows. What's been the one that stuck out the most?
Oh, we're watching that horrible Squid Game show.
Oh, I've heard that's so good.
It's good, but it's so gory and ridiculous. Yeah, we're in the middle of that one right now.
Awesome. Well, we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah, Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on here. And the advice you give to our members it blew me away, and I really hope this impacts a lot of our members and our community that we're building here. And every time a member joins the UTC Real Estate Club, we talk about go to BiggerPockets. Just start talking with people. Talk to people in our local market, but also talk to people that you can't even see in person too, because make relationships with everybody and get out in there and network. So
Build those
thanks
mental
again.
models. Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It was a lot of fun today. So always fun to talk about myself. So thank you guys for inviting me to go do that.
Of course.
Who's going to argue with that?